Kwame Nkrumah, he's such a towering figure of post-colonial history, and it's hard to figure out the best place to start with understanding his legacy and his political thought. But I suppose one place to start is to just ask you guys to place him in historical context. So the mid 20th century is this period of massive transformation. The winds of change are blowing at gale force speed, so to speak. And Kwame Nkrumah ends up as this one person who bursts onto the scene, and obviously not by himself, but with many other contemporaries who are as gigantic. So how do we place him in historical context? Who is he, and how does he come into the scene?
Can we start off with that introduction? That was awesome. I appreciate that. That was very cool. Very well done.
Thank you very much.
Harlem part. I know.
I'm in Brooklyn though. I claim Harlem. I claim Brooklyn too. That was awesome.
You claim all of New York.
But if I could jump in, Anakwa could stop me anytime he wants. But it's that we could even debate that framing that you gave in the beginning of Kwame Nkrumah. It's the Kwame Nkrumah that I had when I first went to Ghana in 1999. This champion of independence bursts on the scene, visionary Pan-Africanist, and then there's this tragic demise without getting into some of the nitty gritty. And so when I arrived in Ghana in 1999, I'm seeing Kwame Nkrumah in this way, and then I encounter all these debates and arguments. I'm like, wow, people don't just love Kwame Nkrumah. And I'm hanging out with people whose families were destroyed by Kwame Nkrumah, who really despised the man. And it blew me away, coming from the diaspora, coming from the United States, where he was celebrated, particularly by people of my generation's parents, who were naming their kids Kwame, even though they weren't born on the proper day. So we could even, that framing is the popular framing, but then the meat on the bones is quite different.
So if you, I know Anakwa wants to jump in, but just to stay with a second with you, when you say like the meat on the bones, can you just like give a flavor of the meat on the bones?
Well, just look. So the meat on the bones is thinking of this vision that Nkrumah and the CPP had in the second half of the 1950s, particularly 57 to say like 60. Where we're building a model post-colonial state, truly self-determined, truly independent, fighting against neo-imperialism, fighting against capitalism, put the two together, right? Self-determination for individual and for the state. And then also modeling Egypt, where now independent Ghana is going to be the defender and champion of sovereignty throughout Africa. But then suddenly we get into 61, 62, 63, and we're battling forces from without and from within, and Ghana becomes this police state. And I think you see Nkrumah not really trusting his own people. And that's the Nkrumah we have to grapple with, where he saw himself as the only one who could accomplish it. Now, I'm sympathetic because neo-imperialism and capitalism are real enemies of the people, right? So, and seeing himself as the only one who can do that. But then the police state is really when things get problematic. Preventive Detention Act, where anyone who criticizes the state, who we think will be against the state or be against the regime, and then Nkrumah is the state, right, can be arrested. And those are the people who are, many of them are still alive and have memories of those times that create this fraught environment and kind of complicate Nkrumah's legacy.
Right.
But you also, I mean, that's such a that's a great way to get into this discussion. Anakwa, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
No. I was going to say that I think it's so interesting you say that too, because being born and raised in Ghana, Nkrumah sort of existed as this figure, this national figure, but someone that I didn't necessarily get too much concrete information on. I move here and to America, and it's here that I see this sort of like this huge interest in Pan-Africanism, and people will get excited to hear that I'm from Ghana. Someone I ran into on the street who was an alum of Lincoln University just gave me a hug, because I was from Ghana, and so I started to look into Nkrumah, and just like you said, there's this progression of this is this wonderful guy, this is this guy who's done all of these great things, but you get to Nkrumah in the late 60s, and particularly, I think for me, the one of the saddest thing was reading Dark Days in Ghana, and his letters from Conakry, where you see that, in fact, he really has this idea that he is the only one who can make any change. And it seems a betrayal of the Nkrumah who was an organizer, back in hitting the streets in Harlem and in Philly, and is the one who broke away from the UGCC and sort of had this radical project. And I was recently reading this book by Grace Lee Boggs, who is this famous organizer affiliated with CLR James and that connection. And she mentions that when she and her husband visited Nkrumah in Conakry, Nkrumah had said that he wishes that they had gotten married, because with her ruling sort of the East, being Chinese, and him ruling Africa, they could have some sort of monarchical state or control of the world. And so you get the sense that Nkrumah had kind of lost it towards the end almost. But I think that what is important, and the legacy of Nkrumah that we see from the EFF today, which broke away from the CPP, interestingly, the same way that the CPP broke away from the UGCC, is that focus of real structural economic change. And we get back to Nkrumah of this sort of neo-colonial analysis.